by using parameters. So parameters in a parameter in a function can modify the functionality. That means this is going to return every time 10 numbers. That means syntax. So this is without parameter. It is going to print always same. Thus 10 numbers, prints 10 numbers every time. So parameters allows to modify this functionality for different states. How? So generally we define the parameter here like this. So the parameter print numbers. Okay. So parameter is counter. So up to is a parameter, and it is a number type parameter. It is a number type parameter. Then we will use this up to here. That means I less than up to. Print numbers up to, or ends with, starts with. So end with, or start with, or any. That means up to this. Then here we need to pass the value. Now here I am passing 5. Here I am passing some 8. That means now the same function, it can work for 2 states. So first time it will print 10 numbers. So console.log. First time it will print 5 numbers. And after that it will print 8 numbers. That means we are compiling and running this, and you can see it is printing. So 5, it is printing 8. Is able to handle the functionality for different states. It is not changing the functionality. It is changing the state. Its state is changing. Functionality is printing numbers, but how many to print, where to start, these you can handle. Now here, a parameter allows you to modify the function. So this is with parameter. So we can configure. So with the parameter. It looks like this. Here some important things you need to learn is when you are, so first point understood, like function parameters. We need function parameters to modify the functionality, for different states. So we are writing a function and a function name. And here we are defining a parameter and its type. So that is the basic thing we written here. So the function and its parameter. Now what you need to understand here is, so this is the function declaration. In the function declaration, we are passing a parameter. And the parameter that is passed in the function declaration. So this is the function declaration, and this parameter that you passed inside the declaration, this is called formal parameter. When you are calling the function, so name, and into that we are passing some value into it, and this is called as actual parameter, or you can also call as arguments. So if anyone asks what is difference between a parameter and an argument, then what should be your answer? What is difference between a parameter and an argument? What should be your answer? Parameters are defined. Parameters are defined in the declaration. Parameters are defined in the declaration, right? And arguments are passed into those parameters while calling the function, right? So arguments are passed while calling. That's it. And parameters when you are defining. The parameters that you define, they are formal parameters. And the values that you pass, they are actual parameters. They are actual values, arguments. So that is formal and actual. You need to know about that formal and actual. So technically, so a syntax for the function. So function and name, and we have a parameter and its type. So this is actually the formal parameter. And while calling the name, so you are passing something into it. This is actual parameter. So or arguments. So these are the basic point we need to understand. So what is parameter and what is an argument? So whatever the value you passed while calling the function, they are referring into that formal parameter. And important is the points you should know is every parameter defined in function definition is by default mandatory. You cannot ignore every parameter defined in function definition is by default mandatory. So you have to define its value while calling it. It's mandatory. So you can specify or you can define optional parameters by using question mark. But we have one rule that is very important. Optional formal parameter cannot be followed by a required formal parameter. This is asked in many interviews. You need to know that. What is this? Is I will show you. Optional formal parameter cannot be followed by required formal parameter. So this is important. For example, suppose we are defining parameters. So some example, suppose function, some product. Okay, here we are defining parameters. You can define parameter. So this is ID. It is a number. Okay. And we have name, name. This is string. These are two parameters. So here we are using ID. We want ID as a product, and I write like this. It is invalid. Why? Because all parameters mandatory. ID and name, like this we define. For example, so if I made this ID as for optional question mark, you see there is an error beside it. Error is nothing but it says that so name is declared but its value never read. Okay, fine. That is warning. Error is a required parameter cannot follow an optional parameter. A require parameter, you can tell in different way, right? Optional parameter cannot be followed with required, or required parameter cannot follow an optional parameter. That's what compiler says. That's what we will also say. That means a required parameter cannot follow an optional parameter. A required parameter cannot follow an optional parameter. So that is the rule. You cannot do that. So that means if I write like this, so syntax, if I write like this, so this is invalid. This is invalid. Invalid. So you cannot do that. So that means suppose ID is required and the name is optional. That's okay, no problem. So this is valid. That doesn't have any issue. This is valid. This is valid. So if I write like this, then this is another syntax for your reference. And this is valid. The rules are important to understand. So a optional parameter can be defined. So then optional parameter is written like this. That means name is optional. But here I am, suppose I am writing like this. Better, I will write in this way. So we have name and it is a string, and price, and price is a number. Okay. And we are printing it. And price is optional parameter, question mark. We are printing console.log, and here I am defining. So name is equal to $name. And in the next line, price is equal to $price. We are printing the name and price values. Now I'm writing here. So product, I need to print. So name, I defined as some Samsung TV. And product, another product, I'm defining as mobile. And price, I defined. Now here important is first one valid? What do you say? Is first one valid? Is this valid? Product Samsung TV, is that valid? Is that valid? Yes, it is valid. But we have problem. Problem is, so you are printing price, and if you don't pass price, obviously it will print price as undefined. Am I right? It will print price as undefined. That means whenever you are dealing with optional parameters, you need to verify undefined. You need to verify undefined. That means what we have to do is, so if price is equal to undefined, then console.log, it should print only name. It should print only name. Else, it should print both name and price. That will be better. Otherwise, every parameter you have to check like that. There is no other chance for that. Otherwise, what you are expecting, it cannot print only that. It will print price is equal to undefined. And how to verify undefined type, we already discussed about that. Right. So initially, we are configuring the types and understanding about the types. So I will let you know so many things. See, we started just discussing about parameters. So I just took up, and you are already in the space, right? Follow with me. You are very fast. Huh? So you are talking about ternary operator, reference parameters. We are going now level by level. Just a rocket took off and you are already in the space roaming around the moon. Huh? So be with me only, not so forward than me. Huh? You will learn all of them, for you are in a hurry. What topic I am discussing here? So just be with this topic, that will be fine to you. Huh? You will easily understand. Oh, you will learn all of them. That's what we are going to learn one by one, level by level. We just started about parameters. So here we are going to understand about how to deal with undefined type. Undefined type. Right. So undefined type, let's check this now. I will compile and run this. That will be better now, right? So tsc demo.ts and node demo.js, and it prints the details. It's okay. Name, only name is printed. If price, then price is printed. That suits the situation. You can configure in this, because if parameter is not passed, what it will return, you know it. So that means if optional parameter is not defined, then you have to handle it by using undefined type. Obviously it returns undefined type. You have to handle it by using undefined type. This is the syntax for that, how you handle the undefined types. So while working with parameters, that is one point, right? So one by one, we are learning so many concepts here, right? So configuring the parameters, and are parameters mandatory? Here, one more question comes is, so parameters are having any order dependency? That means a very important note is parameters have order dependency. Parameters have order dependency. That is the reason. The reason why optional parameters are not allowed with means not allowed to be followed by required parameters. This is important. For example, if anybody asked you a question like why this is not possible, why this is a problem, a required parameter cannot follow optional parameter. Why? If anyone asks you why, what you will say? I hope you understood my question. If anyone asks like why required parameter cannot follow an optional parameter, what is the reason? Why required parameter cannot follow an optional parameter? That's what we discussed just now. I given a point. The point is because parameters have order dependency. Okay. So parameters are order dependency. When parameters have order dependency, let's prove this now. If parameters are having order dependency, like suppose, so I mentioned like name as optional and price as mandatory. Name as optional and price as mandatory. In that case, while calling, so I am trying to pass only price without passing name. That is invalid. Am I right? Understood the situation? Huh? Understood? Right? Yes. That is the point actually. That means optional, second one is optional parameter and first one is mandatory parameter. That's okay. But first one is optional parameter and second one is mandatory parameter. Then how you will pass the value? Actually, what you have to do is in JavaScript, what we can do is in JavaScript, it is valid actually. In JavaScript, it is valid. So in TypeScript, we are restricting it. We are not allowing it. In JavaScript, we don't have. So here, I'm not talking about both are optional. I'm talking about why it cannot possible with one required, right? If you make both as optional, no problem. What is problem in that? That is not a point at all. Actual point is in JavaScript, it is possible. How we do is in JavaScript, because JavaScript don't have optional parameters. It will not support this question mark. Then what you do is all parameters are mandatory and optional. You can ignore them. Then in JavaScript, usually what we do is we simply put here first value is undefined and second value is price. Now it is valid. Understood? Then we have to write logic according to that. But you cannot ignore its position. Its position is mandatory. Its position is mandatory. I hope everyone understood that, right? So why an required parameter cannot be after optional parameter? So this is the situation actually. To avoid this situation, they completely disabled this in TypeScript. Actually, in JavaScript, we don't have optional parameters. Then we have to write undefined according to all that order dependency. To avoid that, this is the concept, right? So you cannot have an optional parameter followed with a required parameter followed with optional parameter. That's what actually the basic about parameter. Right? So that is important. Order dependency will be there. Another important is a parameter can handle any type of value. A parameter can handle any type of value, both primitive, non-primitive, and even a function. A parameter can handle any type of value. It can be a primitive value, non-primitive value, or even a function. A parameter can handle them. So that means a parameter can handle any type of value. Here, our parameter is just a string or a number. So it can be any type of parameter. You can configure any type of parameter. So what is any type of parameter? That means how do we define the parameters? Now here we are configuring this, right? So the values, suppose I said here some print list. Okay. In the print list, we are passing an parameter that is a list. It is a string type array. It is a string type array. It is an non-primitive type. So, and we are writing a for var. So item of list. Of is user to read all the values. Console.log. I'm printing that item. So print list is a function which is printing the list. That means you have array as parameter. Array as parameter. Now, if you have array as parameter, that means one example, array as parameter. Then how you pass value into array? There are several techniques. When I call print list is a function. When we call the print list function, it is expecting a list. It is expecting a list. So how do you pass values into this function is expecting? Then here you can create an array type and into that string type values. So we can pass the values in this way. TV, mobile, that is one technique. You can use another technique, that's console.log. Okay, that is one technique. Another, so I'm calling the print list, and here I'm using a new array. I'm passing an array type value. And into that, we are configuring the values. So that means like shoe and like watch, something like this. This is another technique. There is another technique of passing values into that array. Another technique of passing values into that array. So we can create a list categories is an string type array. Into that we can pass some values. Like I said electronics, and I said some footwear. Okay, this is an array, and I call print list, and in the print list I can simply call that categories, which is an array type. These are various methods of passing data into it. That means you can use a meta character, you can use array constructor, or you create one array of the type which is it is expecting, and you can pass values, pass that array name into it. It can be that type. It can be that type of value. Now it should access and print all the details. It should access and print all the details. So that means it is printing all the details. So everything is same. Only the point is the way how you pass according to the situation depends on your requirement. So it can be an array type parameter. Now another option is so this is example for that array type parameter. And here the concept is, when you are using array type parameter, some more points you have to know is, so you can define a function. You can define a function with multiple array type parameters along with other parameters in any order. This point is very important for our next level concept to understand. You can define a function with multiple array type parameters along with other parameter in any order. This point is very important to understand the next concept. Actually, what does that means is, it means that, so you can have multiple array parameters. Another, suppose sales is a number type array. That's possible. Now I want to print the sales. That means for var item of sales. We are printing console.log. So, and here we are printing item, that is sale. right? Because already item is in use, sale. And console.log, I need to print sales. So print sale, okay, that print, we have to print it. Fine. There can be multiple. Then how do we pass multiple? That use general, that's not special here. So what we are doing is, so we can create the function print list. Into that, we are passing first string type array a comma b, and after that we are passing number type 10 comma 20. That is valid. You can define that and you can handle it. So you can define multiple array parameters. Along with that, you can have other parameters. That means along with array parameters, you can define other parameters in any order, any order. That means here I defined, suppose count. Count is a number. Count is a number. And here I am passing the value. That means here count is 2. Like this we are passing. Roughly I'm passing that. That means this is also, I need to print that. That means console.log log. So count is equal to, and here we are printing it. So the value present in that count. That means there can be parameters. There can be parameters, other parameters along with array. It will show that. So this is not a problem at all. You can have any number of array parameters. You can have them along with other parameters in any order. Why we are specially discussing about this point? Because here, that is what actually the example, in any order you can define. Any number of parameters you can define. Now, why we are discussing this? Because actually ES6 introduced REST parameters. Introduced REST parameters. What is the specialty of this REST parameter? Is a REST parameter can allow multiple values as arguments. That means one parameter is enough to handle all arguments. One parameter is enough to handle all arguments. This kind of situation comes in various occasions. So that means, for example, I need to create it as a string type array. Okay, so only array is expected here. If I try to pass only one value into it as a string form, so it is not allowed. But situation changes. It will not be same every time. Sometimes one value will go. Sometimes many values will go. If I create it as ordinary, then it will take. If I create as ordinary, it will not take array now. If I try to pass an array in that position, it will show an error. So I need one parameter which can handle many values and one value according to the situation. One parameter can handle many values, or one parameter. It should change its situation, right? In that case, generally what we do here, we use a function, and a print list is a function. And here we are writing a list, and we configure this as any type. And for, so var item of list, and print that list console.log item. Okay. Now, when I try to pass here, print list, I need to pass only value here. I'm passing here, suppose, so like this. So that value. And I want to pass another value. So I'm passing another value. So this is not allowed into it because it is not expecting multiple values. So it is not expecting multiple values. Multiple values. I need to collect multiple values. Then if I make it as array type, any type array, then I have to combine this as an array type. That means I keep it as an array type. Then obviously I need to pass an array type here. That means I need to enclose all in the square brace or array constructor. If I define like this, these all values are not allowed. Do you know what it will happen now? It will take only the first TV. It will perform iteration on that because you can perform iteration on string also and read every character from the string. Because string, it works like a string array. Means every character can be individually accessed and displayed. I want all these arguments to be passed into one location. It can be one or it can be multiple. All these arguments must be passed into it. Multiple arguments. We are expecting multiple arguments to be passed into it. If you are expecting multiple arguments to be passed into one reference without an array type, then you can manage that with REST parameter. So it is enough to handle all arguments. So multiple values as arguments. You can pass them. How? Just important is this REST parameter. That parameter is defined with dot. That is fine enough. This is REST parameter. A REST parameter allows you to pass multiple values. This is REST parameter. And it can collect your value and use your value. So here I am printing this shoe console.log. I am printing here again another. So print list. And in that we have electronics. Only one option we have passed into it. Now I will compile and run this here. When I compile and run this, and you can see that it is handling one or many. So that means one parameter or any. If I don't use it as REST parameter, then what it will do is it will take the first value. I don't use it as REST parameter. See what will happen now. And you cannot pass multiple values. So you can pass only one value. Then will it print that one value? No, actually what it will do is it will print that one value. So in this way, TV, it reads every character individually. It's electronics. That means it will just use like a string mechanism. But I want this to handle multiple parameters or a single parameter. Then you can't create like this. You cannot create like an array, because if you create like an array, you can't pass one value into it. Then REST parameter is enough. So REST parameter is defined with three dots. That means a REST parameter is defined with dot. That is the REST parameter. So here the point is, what is the point now? Is the basic rule about this is every function can be defined with only one REST parameter. Every function can be defined with only one REST parameter. And rest parameter must be the last parameter informal must be the last parameter informal list. These are the rules. Every function can be defined with only one rest parameter, and rest parameter must be the last parameter in formal list. So here you can pass any values here. This is TV. What is our type of parameter here? The type of parameter is any. Now 10 true. Will it allow those 10 and true? Right? That should not be a question at all, because if you know about data types, it should not be a question at all. You know any type and all, right? So that is like, again, same question you are asking without knowing it, right? So you know any type, then that should not be a question at all. Any type means it will accept any type of value. So, and these are multiple arguments, right? And it will take any type of arguments. So that should not be a doubt at all. Like, because this, you can clearly see that it is any type, right? Now here, how we can manage this? So how do we deal with that parameter? That means, what is the rule about this? And what is the rule about this? The important is, suppose if I make it string type, then it is not accepted. So it should be any type, because we are not sure about the type of value. So if I are defining string type here or number type here, and you can see there is a problem. The problem is, a rest parameter must be an array type. That means if it is a string type array, now it is okay. In that case, now it will not allow to handle other values. In this case, you don't need this mechanism at all, right? You can use the previous technique. You don't need to come to use rest parameters if you are writing like an array. So the point is, it's not good to define any type for that. Just simple any. That will be better for this. Because if you are using another type and array type, then why to use rest parameter? You can use general parameters, right? No need of nest parameter. So by default, it takes an array. So here, important, what are these rules? See, suppose I want to define one more rest parameter into it, and comma, I'm defining another rest parameter into it, dot some products, and this is any type, and you have a problem. The problem is, suppose you are writing like this, that means you cannot have. And see the rule here, a rest parameter must be the last in parameter list. You cannot use other parameters. Suppose here I am saying count is number, that is not valid. That means, can I use other parameter? You can use other parameters, but rest parameter must be the last in formal parameter. That means this rest parameter must be the last one. That means you need to configure this here. We need to configure this here. So list any type. That is the right way. Now, obviously, when you are calling it print list, the first one will be treated for that particular number, right? And later we can pass any values. So we can pass into this TV. We can pass, suppose I said true. All the other things will be considered into this rest parameter. Understood? All the other things are configured into that rest parameters, right? So that is the English statement I given here. Every function can be defined with one rest parameter. That means no two parameters, right? One means not two. Understood? Yeah. Because somebody asked a question, sir, will it allow two parameters? That's like joke, right? So that means only one means it will not allow two parameters. Okay, right? So here rest parameter must be the last parameter in the formal parameters. Why it should be last parameter? Can you guess that? Why it should be the last parameter? Why it should be the last parameter? Because a rest parameter have to read up to end. Understood? Because a rest parameter must able to read up to end. Understood? A rest parameter should able to read up to end. That means there cannot be anything else in between. Even you mention anything else, it will be considered into rest parameter. Understood? That means rest parameter so reads up to end. That means why it should be the last? Because rest parameter reads up to end of arguments. So it reads up to end of arguments. In that case, obviously anything you mentioned after that is not valid. It will be taken into rest parameter only. Here you can manage this. That means console.log. So I'm printing. So here count is equal to dollar count. That's okay. Rest parameter must be last. So now after rest parameter, can I write anything other parameter? No, you cannot write. Right? That is the key point here. Now it works. So that means we are configuring and defining, and it is working fine. It is working fine. All the other parameters are passed into it. Right. So here, the point is when you are configuring this, any type of parameter can be defined. So parameters can be rest or this. So example for this is a simple example of how you configure those rest parameters and values. All other values are taken into it. So rest parameters are new, and rest parameters have certain restrictions. You need to understand about the restrictions. So when you are dealing with multiple, then you should know about array and rest parameter. Now, can you use an object as a parameter? Object as parameter. Can we define object as parameter? Object as parameter. You can define object as parameter. Usually, how we can define object as parameter? Technically, object as parameter. How we define object as parameter? So here we defined obj is any type, or I told you an object type. So it is an object type. And that is new. If you want, you can configure this as any type. It can handle. Now for so where property in objects and console.log, we are printing the properties and values. That means we need to print the property of that, and colon, I need to print the value for that object of property, which will print the value. So now I'm passing here, so print list, and I can pass an object into it. Object, you know that it will be in a square brace, flower brace. And it is having options like name. So it is some TV. some price, price as some price. So this is object. You can define an object as a parameter. So we can configure an object as parameter. There is no restriction for that. You create object or you can access and use the object. An object can be defined as parameter. Array of objects also can be parameter. That means JSON type. So JavaScript object notation we discussed, it can be. A function can be as parameter. A function can be parameter. So function as parameter, that means here we are defining function as parameter. Why we need functions as parameters? Already I told you, we need functions as parameters for callback mechanism. That means, remember, formal parameters, here you don't write function. Formal parameter, here you don't write function. Formal parameter always refer to memory where you can store a value. It always refers to a memory where you can store a value. That means here we are storing a memory. So memory where you can store a value. That means here I say success. Success is the memory and any type. And failure is the memory, any type. This is the memory allocated. Now don't think that here you will pass functions. Here you will pass function. Because many times, so we have seen people asking question. Even just now one person asked the question. The question like, can a constructor have function as parameter? Parameter will not have functions. I hope everyone understood. Parameters will not have function. Parameter will can be parameter number. Can be parameter a number. Can be parameter a number. Can we define parameter as number? Right? That means your understanding of the question, what the parameter number, what do you say? Here you will write 10 as parameter. What you are talking about? That is formal. Formal means memory, right? Memory, we are allocating memory. Memory reference name. That means we have success. And we have a failure. So failure, this is memory, failure. This is memory of any type. In that memory, you can pass anything. That is memory, right? It is not at all appropriate to ask a question like, can I pass a function as parameter into constructor? What you are talking about? That means you don't know properly about parameter first, right? Parameter is the name of the memory allocated. And function is passed as argument. Am I right? Everyone clear? Function is passed as argument, not as parameter, right? That means the question should be like, can I pass function as argument, not function as parameter? There cannot be anything like parameter, right? So that means here what we are doing now, we are simply defining here a simple password. Already I showed you in previous example. Suppose I said print. Suppose here some password. So let pwd is a string type, and is equal to some admin 123. That is the password. And here if pwd is equal to admin 123, then it should call success as a function, and else it should call failure as a method. Then when you implement this print list, so this print list is having a function. Now you pass a function as parameter and another function as, this is argument, this is actual parameter, right? So that means one function is in the success, second function is in the failure. And what this function has to print. So this function has to print console.log verified login success, something like this, login success. Else this is the second function which should print console.log. It should print that invalid password. That's how the function executes. So that means into that we are passing the values, executing them. Currently, this is just a demo example I showed you, right? So here I'm compiling and running this. Then it says login success because it is matching with the password. Something went wrong. When something went wrong, then it will call another function. So that means it should say invalid password. So this is the memory allocated. Into the memory, you can pass any type value. It can be an object, it can be array, it can be a function, right? You don't write functions as parameters. You pass functions as arguments. That is the basic difference you should know first, right? So that means function as parameter is never allowed. Am I right? Is never allowed. So functions are passed as arguments. That means this is how generally function as parameter is not allowed. This is how we generally do. That means this is the memory for that. Into the memory you are passing a function. That means this success is a function now. It can be a string or a number or a function. You can define with any other parameters also. There is no restriction for this. That is how we define the parameters, function and parameters. Right. Now similarly, now we have function return types. So what are those return types and how do we define? That we'll see in tomorrow's session, right? Tomorrow we will discuss about function and its return types. Then we can go into advanced options in TypeScript like enums, like generics and other object-oriented approach. So that will allow us to understand all the TypeScript with advanced features, which we will utilize in our Angular regularly, right? Then tomorrow we'll continue with this one, right? Success and failure are the memory reference names where you can pass any type of value. Yes, Manoj.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Hello. సార్ ఇప్పుడు మనం పుష్ కోడ్ యూస్ చేయొచ్చా దాంట్లో? ఇప్పుడు ఇన్పుట్ బటన్ లోంచి సపోజ్ నేమ్స్ అవన్నీ తీసుకుంటాం కదా సార్ డేటా, దాన్ని తీసుకెళ్లి ఫంక్షన్స్ లో ఇప్పుడు చెప్పారు కదా దాంట్లో పారామీటర్స్
డైనమికల్లీ వస్తాయి. ఇది మనం డైనమిక్ గా ఏం చేయట్లేదు
అంటే యూస్ చేయొచ్చు కదా అని డౌట్ వచ్చింది సార్. అది
ఇక్కడ ఎక్కడ చేస్తాం? ఇక్కడ డైనమిక్ ఎక్కడ ఉంది?
సపోజ్ పుష్ లో మనం తీసుకొని చేయాలనుకుంటే చేయొచ్చు కదా.
ఒక అరే ఉండాలి కదా దానికి.
అంటే మీరు ఇప్పుడు పారామీటర్స్ లో అరే అని పెట్టారు కదా, పారామీటర్ లో అరే దాంట్లో పుష్ చేయొచ్చు కదా.
దానికి రెఫరెన్స్ నేమ్ ఏంటి? మెమొరీ పారామీటర్సే కదా మనం పాస్ చేయాల్సింది. వాల్యూస్ కదా పాస్ చేయాలి. వాల్యూస్ కదా పాస్ చేయాల్సింది.
సారీ సార్.
No, the question was, he was asking about how do we can use push function. Push function, we are not having a reference at all, right? We have to first create an array to push values, right? Directly we cannot use the push function, right? Because it reads up to end. That's the reason it should be the last parameter. It reads up to the end. That's the reason it should be the last parameter. Right. Push or array functions, right? We already learned array related functions we discussed. No. Okay then. Right. Okay. Let's see tomorrow. Continue. Thank you.